It's another fine day at Camp Dynasty. I am Counselor Austin, joined by Counselor Collin. Yes, Camp Dynasty still exists. We just, the holidays, Collin. It gets in the way, and schedules and all of these things, and we just take a holiday break.
Yeah, we tried to record a podcast like 3 separate times and just couldn't find time that worked for both of us. So we're like, you know what? Take a break, come back, do some more scouting on these running backs since there's 50 of them to watch, and come back with a little more honed in takes for, the listeners at home.
Yeah, so we are talking about running backs, and that's very exciting because we've been waiting for the entirety of the season to get to this point of grinding the film, understanding the class, and figuring out what it looks like in 2025, because we know that we need running backs, and we didn't get many of them last year, or maybe it wasn't the ones we necessarily expected.
Yeah.
Because apparently Bucky Irving is just the best. The truth. So maybe there's some Bucky Irvings lurking in this class, but fortunately for us as Dynasty players, the top of the class doesn't really leave anything to be desired this year. Was that your experience as well, I'm sure, watching this class?
Yeah, I feel great about this class. It's basically as advertised, I would say. There's a lot of really, really good high-end guys, and then even as you go down the list, it's like, man, I could see this guy contributing in a lot of ways in a lot of offenses. So regardless of, if you're at the top and you have, that 101 and you're eyeing up the guy, or if you're sitting down in the bottom of the first, top of the second round, I feel like you'll still end up with a good player. And that's why we decided not to go with a top 5 here with running backs, because this class is so loaded. Ended up expanding to how many? How many do we want to do?
Well, we're going to do 8.
Yeah.
We're going to do 8. That feels like a good number. We talked about maybe doing 10. I think for right now, starting with 8, I watched about 12 guys, I think. And there's a few guys that I wanted to watch that there's just not a ton out there as of right now. So that stuff's going to come over the next few months, and we'll be able to talk about some of those deeper, potentially deeper names as the process goes on. And that's kind of a general point that I do want to make before we dive into this, is like general impressions of the class. Yes, the top end's very good, but I'm 100% on board with what you just said, which is that there are going to be so many guys that are going later in the draft. I mean, I'm talking day 3 running backs in this class that are talented players that have, qualities to their game where you can watch them and project them to the NFL and say, yeah, you're probably going to be like a 4th, 5th round guy, but you're kind of exciting. Like you land in the right place, and then I can get excited about you. So that's fun. It's top end talent, and it's incredibly deep. So we're going to be talking about a super talented player right away at number 8. And let's get started.
Let's go.
Who started on quarterbacks?
I don't remember. I could never. It's 2 weeks ago now. That's just so long ago.
It's forever. I'll start.
Yeah, let's
do what? I'll raise my hand. My number 8 running back in the 2025 Dynasty rookie class is DJ Giddens from Kansas State. Did he make your list?
He's off my top 8.
Okay. So I will say this. This is a little bit of a my guy thing. I am choosing to see the positive qualities in Giddens because I think there are many positive qualities to his game. There are also some weaknesses or limitations, perhaps, that probably make him more of that day 3 type of a runner. But I see talent in this player that maybe exceeds where he might go on NFL draft day. So let me explain what I mean by all that. First and foremost, pros with Giddens, man, he is a creative runner. He knows how to make yards happen. Yards that are not necessarily there for him, he knows how to find them. And that is a combination of his vision, first of all, which I think is very good. I think he navigates the middle of the field, middle of the line of scrimmage very well. I think he can identify running lanes quickly and easily. But more importantly than that even is when he finds his spot, he knows how to make defenders miss in those short areas time and time again. This is a player that you're going to see all sorts of different moves on his film. There's certain running backs where you're not going to get a lot of creativity. They're going to find their spot. They're going to find their hole. They're going to maybe, give a defender a head fake and try to get around him. Giddens is the kind of player that's going to break out a dead leg all the time. And then just when you think you have him read on the dead leg, then he's going to hit a spin move and he's going to vary up his attack in these one-on-one situations. And that is something that I love to see in running backs, because at the end of the day, the margins that separate some of these guys, when you're talking about later players, later guys that don't have the elite traits or the elite athleticism, they're pretty tightly packed. And these small nuanced differences that you get with a player like Giddens, I think can go a long way in, making a quote unquote sleeper, a player that definitely has athletic limitations. And that's one of the reasons why I simply cannot put him any higher than 8. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like this is his ceiling in this class. I think somebody that's looking at it maybe with a little bit less of a, rose-colored glasses might even put him lower like you did. And it's because he's just not a high-end athlete. And that is a limiting factor for him. But I love his creativity. I see a more creative runner than guys that are ahead of him even on this list.
Yeah, I think Giddens could absolutely be like a third down guy in the league because I think he does really well in pass pro. And then he also gets out and runs a nice angle route, makes himself available, and just like is a pretty savvy player in general. And that's kind of what you got to do if you're not going to be a hyper athlete. So I have him down a little lower, like you said. It's just like it feels like we're lacking a little bit of juice with Giddens, and I'd like to see a little more pop and a little more decisiveness, because I feel like when he's in the open field, when he has a one-on-one, it's pretty successful. Sometimes he can get caught dancing a little bit. Sometimes he can get caught, looking around to make a play. But like I said, I really like him in, the shotgun, protecting the quarterback and then leaking out, or running a route one-on-one against a linebacker. I feel like he, like you said, is a really good lower body and can make guys miss pretty easy. And yeah, I feel like we got a nice third down guy that's going to go late in the draft and carve out a role on an offense somewhere.
Yeah, and I didn't really touch on what I saw from him as a pass catcher, but I agree. I think he certainly has talent in that area. I will say there's a lot of really good pass catching backs in this class. Mm-hmm. Even guys that didn't put up the numbers necessarily in college, where you watch them and you say, "Oh yeah, he's a natural. He's got he's got easy hands." Giddens is a player that I think looks a little bit less natural as a pass catcher. They certainly got him involved over the last 2 years. 30 receptions in 2023, 20 receptions this year, about 600 yards over the last 2 seasons as a receiver. This year, he did have 5 drops, and I saw a couple of them on film. I mean, it's just an area where he needs to improve a little bit, become more dependable. Drops are kind of a little bit more magnified with these backs because you're not getting as many opportunities. So when you have 5 drops on 32 targets, that's a massive problem. But one of the highlights of watching this class was he routed up a linebacker with a little double move and the guy like broke his ankles. And
That's
it was hilarious because even the all 22 rewinded itself and zoomed in. It was like, this is not a YouTube video. And it's like, we have to call out what just happened because this was ridiculous. And so
he can run some routes.
He can. So he's multi-talented, certainly areas of limitation, like I said, for him, but I love Giddens as a early day 3 sort of running back in this very deep class.
My number 8 is Nick Singleton. Do you got him higher?
I have him lower.
Okay. So Singleton, I'd say never quite lived up to who Singleton was supposed to be. I mean, this is the guy that was the future 101 when he was a freshman, and we had our eyes on him. And it just seems like he never really capitalized on the athleticism that he had. I think that that's one of the big pros for him, is that he is a freakish athlete. It seems like less so than he was a freshman. I feel like he lost a little bit of burst that he showed, but you can still see it every once in a while. But he's not a very powerful runner either, I've noticed. Like I wanted him to be a little bit stronger and fight through some more tackles. And I guess I went into this really wanting to like Singleton more than I ended up liking him. Still a good player with high upside. I think he has become like more of a role player in this Penn State offense rather than the focal point of the Penn State offense. And he's showed his chops, putting himself on the line, blocking, like lead blocking for Tyler Warren on those like tight end powers, and staying in to protect Drew Aller. But when he's asked to go, it's a lot of outside stuff. He's a better runner outside than I think he is inside, and he can, turn it on and show it, but it just doesn't seem like he creates as much as I wanted him to. And it was almost a little disappointing how he ended up here.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. I thought, we saw improvements in terms of the production side from 23 to 24. And of course, the freshman season was the big thing coming into, you said it. We thought, man, this guy's going to be up there with Judkins for 101 in a couple years. Falls a little bit off the cliff last year, rebounded this season, 935 yards, 8 touchdowns and 6.4 per carry, up from 4.4 in 23. I'm still seeing the same issues, really, that I saw coming into the year. And I had him top 5 coming into the year because he's an exceptional athlete. And in the summer, you're kind of sitting there like, man, I really hope he takes a jump. Like, the offense is getting a little bit of a facelift. I don't know what really was going on last year. The Penn State offense was kind of a mess. I'm going to just kind of bet on Singleton to return to that form. And unfortunately, I think we're just seeing the flaws in this player's game. Yeah. And it's just not things that are, going to improve. He is a very much a project running back. And a few years ago, that was not something where I was turned off by. The longer we've done this and the more guys like this that I've seen, it's just not something that flies in the NFL. There is no time to develop these running backs because running backs are a dime a dozen. I mean, go grab whoever. There's 10 day 3 running backs in this class that'll get you yards better than Nick Singleton can right now.
Yep.
He's a much better athlete than all of those players, but he's
not a better running back.
No, he's not at all. And so I see a lot of, hesitation, a lot of dancing on his film, getting caught behind the line of scrimmage, doing a little bit of like a shimmy shake. He loves to shimmy shake, and it's not doing anything.
Yep.
He's just wasting motion and wasting time. And when he is in one-on-one situations, he's not even making guys miss. So when you are this level of an athlete and you can't even win your one-on-ones as a running back, that's a big time problem. So I do think to spin this a little bit more positive, he is a really nice asset in the passing game, where I think there's enough there that he's not just like a, round 6, round 7. Like, I think about Zach Evans. Like, I kind of feel like this is just Zach Evans, like ultra athletic, high recruiting pedigree, flashes in college, wasn't a complete running back. And the NFL just didn't have time for that. I think the same thing is possible here, but I do think you're getting a pretty significant passing skill set where there might be some opportunities for Singleton to kind of get worked in as a rotational piece in the passing game and maybe, develop in that way. But that is going to come, much later in this class than a lot of the guys.
Here's my galaxy brain take. Nick Singleton, the actual next Debo.
Yes.
Let's just turn him into a wide receiver because he can't go between the tackles. He's a good pass catcher. He can block on the outside. I don't know. Just throwing it out there.
I love that. I love it. Why not?
Throw him a couple bubble screens, get him on some slants. Just have him train full time with, like, I don't know, a good route runner. Get him a technician, and boom, here we go.
I mean, he had some crazy moments, and I mean, he had a leaping, I think, was it a fade or something? He caught a ridiculous touchdown this season. Like,
every time that I was like impressed, it was as a pass catcher.
Yeah.
And they'll like split him out 5 wide, and they'll like throw him in the slot and have him bubble out, and he's good at reading blocks in those situations. It just seems like when he's getting the ball, and like you can hand the ball off because obviously he's a running back, but let's just opposite Antonio Gibson him.
Yes. So there is hope for Nick Singleton. Let's get him
a receiver.
Yeah, let's make him a hybrid player. Reverse Tyrone Tracy. There you go. He could be Tyrone Tracy, but the other way.
Exactly.
All right. Number 7.
Number 7
for me is Ollie Gordon.
Okay. I left him off.
He's off your list.
Done.
You're done. I understand that. I really do. This was, obviously I think you go into this expecting like the player that you thought you were getting before the year is just not, he's just not that guy. But I was somewhat impressed by what I saw. Like for the numbers that he had this year to look as, far off than what he did when he won the Doak Walker. I mean, incredible 1,700 yard season, 21 touchdowns. For him to regress this much, I was pleasantly surprised by how, the tape didn't regress all that much, in my opinion. To be quite honest, I think it just sort of caught up. I think his production last year was just kind of fake, like in the sense that he was never that good of a running back prospect. He just had a phenomenal season. And I think this year was more indicative of kind of what you're getting with Ollie Gordon, which to me is a player that has, obviously some athleticism at this size that is impressive. I don't think it's, so his speed, first of all, let's talk about his speed. He has speed, but it is very much build-up speed. Mm-hmm. He does not have elite acceleration or burst. He needs to get a head of steam. And when he can get that head of steam, he gets going. And I think that's what was happening a lot last year, is that he was just able to get into the open field and build up that speed and finish these runs and put up a ridiculous amount of yards doing that. And he just wasn't given the time and space to do that this year. I think in terms of, vision, I think it's solid. I think it's inconsistent, but I think it's solid. I think you see him identify cutback lanes quickly every once in a while, make a really impressive read. And it's like, oh, damn, that was really nice. And then there's other times where he just completely whiffs and misses it or cuts it back into traffic. And then I think the other aspect of his game that is somewhat intriguing to me, of course, is the pass catching again, because this is a player that at 6'2", 225 last season at 50 targets, 330 yards this year, 38 targets for 198 yards. But I still think you're seeing that skill set show up this year. And he's running a lot of routes. These are not just, swings and screen, like he's running a lot of different routes out of the backfield for them. And so I think there's something here. I think he was overbilled coming into the year. And I think right now what he is a later day two sort of, you're going to take a dice roll on a guy like this, but you're maybe not expecting him to be, the number one out of the gate.
Yeah, I think that's not bad. And I think before the season you comped him to Audric Estime and you're like, this isn't a real comp. I think maybe it is. I think that might be just where we ended up, and that puts him as like the RB10 for me in the class, and that's not terrible in a class this loaded. He's a player that, like you said, takes a little bit to build up, and with a worse O-line this year than they had last year, there just wasn't a lot for him to work with. And he's, fighting through tackles. I think he plays pretty well with his size. I'd like him to play, obviously he's 6'2", so he's got a high center of gravity. I feel like he's got to get lower because he gets hit in that midsection a lot, and that's a lot of the cause of his problems. And I mean, that's why you want your running back to be 5'10" and not 6'2". So that I feel like is an issue. He feels like he runs pretty high, and when you're not super fast, you just make yourself like a target for linebackers to tee off on. I think, like you said, he's interesting in the pass game. I think he could be like, it's hard to say like he'd be a good short yardage back because he doesn't have the like acceleration to like build. It's kind of like AJ Dillon, like AJ Dillon. It feels like he in theory should be a good goal line short yardage back, but in practice, he's not going fast enough to send people backwards when he gets to the line of scrimmage. So you need him to get 1 yard. It's like I'm hitting a linebacker and I'm going backwards because the linebacker's like being down on me while I'm, still building up to top speed. You need somebody with a little more juice. So while he could be like a short yardage back, it's tough to say that. So you almost want him to be like a 2-down back that gets spelled, but he's interesting in the pass game. So I don't know. That's where my biggest thing is like, what role does he actually have in an NFL offense? And like, is a team going to build a run game around Ollie Gordon after, who knows? So, and then there's also the personal history stuff that's going to be flagged by NFL teams. And I'm sure he's going to get red flagged by, 6-7 teams. So it's a combination of things where I'm just like, I don't know if I'm drafting Ollie Gordon because there's just like one too many things that I have no idea how this is going to look. So that's where I'm at.
And I think that's a good point too, is like, he really is sort of a tweener when you think about, okay, he's big, he's got a big frame, but he's not running like he has this big frame. Like he's not moving guys consistently at this size. And he's also not that explosive. So like he's not running with enough power because what you would imagine that he could run with at this size, but he's also not super explosive. So it's like a slippery slope where like you like some of the things that you see,
yep,
but you get to the next level, and if you don't have a thing that's exactly like, this is how I'm going to win in the NFL, you're going to get drowned out. So I totally understand why you would move him that far down. And for me, it's just literally a matter of like, there's some flashes in there. I've seen this player do some crazy things on the field, and I think an NFL team is going to roll the dice in the same way that they rolled the dice with A.J. Dillon. And I like that you brought that name up because that's a name I've been thinking a lot about when I talk about Ollie Gordon too.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right.
My number 7.
Yep.
It's Dylan Sampson.
Dang, there it is.
Where do you have him?
He's outside of my top 8.
Okay.
I'm excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, so Dylan Sampson, we've kind of been tiptoeing around for a while because I guess we don't exactly know like what the fate of this player is, what the future of this player is with Tennessee, if he's going to go back or if he's going to go to the draft. It was his June
officially declared.
Okay, I looked and I couldn't find it, so I'm glad you found that.
Yep.
Okay, so his junior year was a true like breakout season at Tennessee. Never having more than 605 yards in a season, had 1,491 rushing yards and 22 touchdowns. He also had 20 catches, 143 yards, just to familiarize yourself with him. Sampson, I mean, kind of jumped off the screen a little bit for me when I was watching him. I was really impressed with the contact balance is the number one thing, where he is just a strong runner and it is hard to bring him down. Like it's going to take, 2 guys to get him down. He's really explosive out of the backfield. He's pretty decisive. There's times where you can see he second guesses himself, but when he hits that hole and slashes, he's going, and that's what makes him so tough to bring down. He brings all that speed and acceleration behind him and puts it behind his pads and delivers some punishment in these games. And you can see like some wild highlights from Sampson from this season. But I don't know. I just, every single time I watched him, I was like, man, he just broke another 4 tackles on this carry, whether it was for 3-4 yards or whether he broke one for 56. It just seems like, you talked about with Ollie Gordon, I don't know if he has a thing. It feels like Dylan Sampson's thing is, not going down on the first contact. And that, I think, is something that an NFL team is absolutely going to roll the dice on and could absolutely feature in an offense. And it kind of, now, I know this might not be a great thing, but it reminds me of Dameon Pierce a little bit, where he's like an angry runner that will not go down. And I know Pierce didn't exactly pan out, but that rookie season kind of gives me the same vibes as Sampson.
So I have Sampson number 9.
Okay.
And I'm honestly like... I'm still trying to figure out what I really think about him.
Yeah.
Because I don't see. So first of all, he's 5'11", 200 pounds.
Yep.
He's an undersized back.
Yep.
And I think for his size, he has good contact balance. But I don't think it's generally a top trait of his, at least not from the games that I watched.
No, that's fair.
I saw a lot of instances of him getting hit and maybe he picks up a yard or 2, but he's not really getting off of contact. And I can see when you look at the stat sheet, there is a cluster of games in the middle of the year in which his yards after contact per attempt number was consistently between 2.5 and 3.5.
Mm-hmm.
That is, I'm pretty sure, where I watched all of my games.
Right.
So I need to go watch one of these games where he has 4.36 and 4.24 to see what is the root cause of all of that. The other thing I'll say about Sampson is he's really fast. This was the thing that put him on the map for me earlier in the year when we were talking about him every week. It was like weekly Dylan Sampson, burner run. And that shows up. And I mean, for a player of this size, that's kind of something that you need to see, is that he has that sort of speed to, if he's not the biggest guy out there, he's at least going to win with speed. The problem was I also didn't see a ton of wiggle from him. And he had 70 missed tackles forced this year. But I watched the game against Florida where PFF credited him with 11 missed tackles forced. And either I was sleeping or they were being very generous in that game. So I just thought there were some areas on Sampson's film that, like, I wanted to see more from him. This is a name that's getting a lot of buzz. I've certainly heard now that he's officially declared. The noise is getting kind of loud with Sampson because he is a fun runner. He had an amazing season, a record-setting season for Tennessee, 22 touchdowns this year. But unfortunately, I thought, like, he's not that much further off than Jalen Wright was for me last year. I think similar ways that they win. I think I gave Sampson a few notches above where I graded Jalen Wright, but I didn't see a difference maker right now.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And like I said, it's the number 7 running back. But I still think, like, Sampson, his ability to, like, deliver punishment I feel like if you put his skill set in Ollie Gordon's body, it'd make a whole lot of sense, Like, we got a guy that's running behind his pads that's looking to, put somebody in the dirt. That would make a lot of sense. But yeah, I think that is a little bit of a detriment sometimes when, it would be great if he was a little more, elusive every once in a while. So he doesn't go down on that first contact rather than, trying to put his shoulder down and make something happen.
And an important note about Sampson, he is the youngest running back in this group.
Yep. Dynasty is going to love Dylan Sampson.
He will be 20 years old when he is selected in the NFL draft. So he definitely has the youth, the, projectable upside that we love with Dynasty. So he's a player that I would expect to come into the league and probably not produce immediately. And I think that might be the best case scenario for him as a player that is, probably asked to be a role player before he gets an opportunity.
Yeah, I would agree.
All right. Number 6. Devin Neal.
Okay. I've met 5.
So he's a legend of the program.
That's right.
I mean, we've been on quite the journey with Devin Neal, but I'm pleased to say that after watching his senior year, there were no surprises.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Yep.
Like, I think Devin Neal is the embodiment of what you see is what you get. I think he is a very solid running back. I think big pros on the Devin Neal scouting report. Vision, just excellent vision, man. He consistently makes great reads. He's making them at 100 miles an hour. He seems to have a really good understanding of how a play is going to develop. Very patient runner that waits for that cutback lane to open and hits it the second it's there. He's operating at a very high frequency and picking the right spot consistently. For a player that is bigger at 215 pounds, he's got really quick feet. He can move. He can get moving quickly behind the line of scrimmage. And that leads into the first point that I made, where he's getting moving and he's getting to where he needs to be pretty quickly. He's a better up the middle runner than I initially gave him credit for. That was something that I knocked him for last year. He is a much better up the middle runner than I thought. Flashes of high end elusiveness. I will say, did you think he looked less explosive this year?
Mm-hmm. It feels like they asked him to become a better between the tackles runner.
Yep.
Which I don't know if it took away his opportunity to like be the shifty Devin Neal that you saw his junior season, because he looked more like a quote unquote like real runner. And that's a positive for his NFL career. But it did seem like he lost a little bit in the front of like, I'm outside and I'm making these guys look stupid.
Yep. 100% agree. I was like, I'm liking what I'm seeing. This is a good running back, but this isn't really what I expected from Devin Neal based on what I watched coming into the year and what I've watched, prior to that even. I mean, even then, he still has some really nasty plays in the open field. There's one against Houston where he makes a double move juke and the guy's soul leaves his body. It's like, damn. Okay. So yeah, I was really impressed. I mean, and the point that you made there about, it feels like he looks more like a real runner. And I think that's very, very much the case. I think in this scheme and in the ways that he was used and in the ways that he was winning, it was harder to see or project him as a, every down starting caliber running back in the NFL. Coming away from 2024, I feel pretty confident that this can be a starting NFL running back. I think he's not necessarily a 1. He's more of a 1A or a 1B type of a player, I think. But I really liked what I saw from Devin Neal this year.
Yeah, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse with Devin Neal, but I love watching Devin Neal. I feel like it, when you're saying good things about him, I feel like a proud parent. I'm like, yeah, my boy, Devin Neal. So if we're talking about who our guys are through this draft process, it's been Devin Neal since last year. So, yeah, I was really impressed with him as a between the tackles guy. I mean, I saw flashes of it last year, and I mentioned that where I'm like, I feel like there's like more here than they're doing, and it feels like Kansas kind of changed their offense a little bit, and they, like we just mentioned, asked Devin Neal to do more of the downhill dirty work as a runner rather than a little bit of the sexy stuff with the eye candy and the motions and the outside stuff. It seems like he is getting busier and busier between the tackles, and he's also, like I said a lot during the season, I want to see Devin Neal in the pass game. I just want to see him catch more passes. And I think he looked really good when he was catching passes, but I also think like he is really good in pass pro. Like he is stonewalling people. He's reading blocks correctly. Like I know Jalen Daniels is not calling out pass pro. I'm sorry. I'll say it. And I think Devin Neal is doing a great job of finding blitzers, picking them up, and just stonewalling them and holding it down. And then he knows when to leak out into a route to give the quarterback a safety valve. So I'm like probably too high on Devin Neal, but that's where we're at right now. Like I just, you got to plant your flag in, some spots in dynasty drafts to get your guys. And this is one of those players where I'm, not afraid to be wrong about him.
So do you have number grades on your guys yet? Like, do you have like a
Not
round?
Yet, no.
Okay. Because I mean, you have him 5, I have him 6. Like we're pretty close.
Yeah.
I have him graded right now as a trying to decipher my scale every year.
I'd say I'd have him as a early second based on vibes.
Okay. So I have him late second,
yeah.
But my scale does not like factor in positional value. So for running backs, it's like if I grade you as a late second, I probably think you're going to be drafted in like the 3rd round. And I think that's probably where I'd expect Devin Neal to go. But he's one of those players where, this is the sort of class where like guys are going to go in the 3rd round and you're going to get super excited about them because these are like really good players. Like Devin Neal's not far off from like Benson and Brooks for me last year in terms of the grade I gave him. So, yeah.
And I, just to be like, compared to last year, like, I still have him as my RB1 from last
Yeah.
year. Like, I'd have him above Brooks. I'd have him above Benson. Like, a revisionist history, like Bucky Irving didn't really have him that high, but Devin Neal would be my number one. Like,
Bucky Irving was my number one running back. Fact check me.
Yeah, I think I'd have him right underneath Bucky Irving, who I had as my number one.
Oh man. Just real quick, weaknesses. Like, he's just not that great of an athlete. Like he's a good like phone booth athlete. Like, he's gonna make people miss and tight.
Is not that, like, the long speed is a little less.
It's very questionable, and we know that it's like that is on the totem pole of running backs. Like, what am I looking for? Like, long speed or breakaway speed is not necessarily one of the top qualities, but this is not a player that's going to break runs. Like, he consistently gets caught from behind when he gets, past the second level of defenders. And then I thought just kind of like generally like not a super explosive, like bursty runner either. Like, quick laterally, more quick than like explosive, I would say. So
yeah, he's also another guy that runs a little upright, where I think that, like, he runs kind of with his chest out when he's breaking away, and I think that contributes to him being a little, not getting to top speed how you might expect him to.
Not aerodynamic enough.
No.
All right. Your number 6 then.
My number 6 is TreVeyon Henderson, who you have higher.
And I have him at number 5.
There we go. So TreVeyon, another legend of the program, I would say. This is a player that, came into this year as someone we had said that maybe temper expectations on the counting stats, because he's going to be splitting a backfield with another pretty good player in Quinshon Judkins. So ended the season with 825 yards, 8 touchdowns, still playing. He's going to be playing Wednesday against Oregon, and that's going to be a good game. But this is a guy that thrived off of the reduced role that he had. They knew exactly how to use him in this Ohio State scheme. It seemed like while they were trying to figure out how to use Judkins, they when in doubt, go back to the old reliable, and TreVeyon Henderson could like bust off a 6-7 yard run every time he touched the ball. And it was, pretty solid. I liked what I saw. He is the player that I think we thought he was going to be. The player that could have been the RB1 of last year's class. We've talked about that for 2 years also, where we wanted him to come out. We wanted Devin Neal to come out because we wanted that 23 class to be a little stronger, or that 24 class to be a little stronger. But he comes back, and now he ends up as the RB 5-6 in this class because he's a year older. He's had some injury history. He has the juice. He has the open field spatial awareness to make guys miss, and it feels like he's a vet already. And it's like he's a 22, 23. So I don't know. I feel like we've said a lot about TreVeyon Henderson, and he is that player.
That's how I feel about him. Like, he just feels like the vet in the room on this Ohio State team. Like, he was so dependable for them this year, even in the games where Quinshon was not really getting rolling. The Oregon game, like the Oregon game in the regular season, like Quinshon was struggling a little bit to find space in that game. TreVeyon was ripping runs. He was just such an impressive player this year. I thought he looked better this year. Like he would have contended for my RB1 last year. He graded out after this year easily as my number 1 running back from last year. Like, this was a really good season for him. And it makes me kind of glad that he went back in a weird way to kind of put to bed any of the ideas that this player has like lost something. I mean, and he's still coming in at, RB6, RB5. So he's not that, prolific, future 101 that we maybe expected in his freshman season. But this is a really damn good running back. Incredible burst and speed.
Mm-hmm.
He is a big play runner, and that was fully back this year. We got tastes of it last year when he came back, started with that Notre Dame game, and throughout the rest of the season, it was like, I think he's back. And he did that for an entire season this year. So the explosiveness that was very alluring about him a few years ago is, as far as I'm concerned, it's fully back. Great player in space. You mentioned that. They got him outside a ton, tosses, outside zone, get him moving laterally, and just let him use those tools that he has to cut it upfield and make a big play. He also had just some ridiculous moments in pass pro. The game against Penn State was one of the most impressive blocking performances I've ever watched from a running back, I think. Like, lead blocking, putting guys on their ass, and then picking up guys on blitzes and pass pro and holding them up. I mean, really impressive. So you talk about the veteran, he's doing all the little things right for this team. In terms of the weaknesses or why he is, in this kind of middle tier of this class, I thought the vision was okay. Like, I thought there were certainly moments where he was misreading plays. And I think, it works a lot when they get him outside, but running between the tackles is a different story. And that's something that I remember from last year even. He's just a different player running between the tackles than he is getting outside. And despite his burst and his speed, he doesn't have great wiggle. He's not a player that's going to, win in a phone booth, win in that tight space against the guy. He is fully reliant on, jump cuts and turn on the gas. So little more one-dimensional in that sense than some of the guys ahead of him, I would say. But man, when you talk about this as a player that's going late round 1 in the Dynasty rookie draft and, round 2, round 3 in the NFL draft, I mean, this is incredible stuff compared to last year. Sure.
I was going to say, this is the testament of the class as you get to, I have this as my tier break at 6, where you're talking about guys that could go in and make a real impact on an NFL offense, and the guys that are going to step in and, if, depending on situation, draft capital, blah, 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 as, we talk about all running backs, if they land in a good spot with a chance to start, can be, high draft picks. And that's something that we lacked last year. It was all, wide receivers and quarterbacks. And now it's like so many running backs. It's almost, I don't want to say it's too many, because it's not, because we need this in Dynasty really bad. We need some young running backs to step in. So yeah, this is pretty fun.
I'm going to throw out my first comp of the episode.
Go.
TreVeyon Henderson, more explosive Isaiah Pacheco.
Okay.
Kind of similar running styles. They run a little heavy footed. They kind of, you get the high knees going a little bit, kind of stomping. Got the breakaway speed. Both of them have that. I think TreVeyon's just a little bit more laterally explosive.
Okay. I can't say I love it, but that's okay.
Damn it. Aesthetically, I just had a vision watching him. I'm like, this kind of looks like Isaiah Pacheco.
I feel like he doesn't get his knees high enough.
Well, maybe. I mean, who does? Who gets their knees that
That's
high?
what I'm saying. I feel like Isaiah Pacheco is uncompable.
This is why we don't do comps.
Nobody looks like Isaiah Pacheco is the problem.
Where the hell are we?
That's an Isaiah Pacheco.
You're right.
We're at 4.
We're at 4 because 5s are accounted for. We 5 and 6. So number 4, and I'm I'm up, right?
You're up.
Quinshon.
I have Quinshon at 4.
Okay. So this is a change for me from when we did the mock draft, because I had Quinshon ahead of Kaleb Johnson on my board for the mock draft that we did.
Spoiler. Jeez.
Spoiler. I know, but
can't
be
really
even more of a spoiler if he was at like 12.
Yeah, right.
So, but yeah, so Quinshon, I thought this was a good year, but it did pain me a little bit. I thought he lost something this year. Did you feel the same?
Yeah, I did feel the same. I wanted, so we kind of started the season. Our messaging around Judkins was like, hold the line, because we know that this is going to be a suppressed season in terms of production, but it'll be okay. Like, the tape is going to match what we saw in the past. And I'm not going to say it didn't match what we saw, but it did feel like it was, if he was an A before, maybe it was like a B+. And like, that's not a bad thing, but it just felt like there might have been, in it, a little, so like you said, a little something was missing.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like, I think the narrative here for the entirety of the season was like, don't look at the stats. Like, the stats are going to lie this year because of the fact that there are 2 running backs. You see it right here, 4 and 5 or 6 on these lists. They're in the same backfield. And Quinshon was the 1A on this team. He was getting the majority of the carries, or the larger share of the carries at least. And it was a good year. Like you said, he went from maybe an A to a B+, but I think he lost that. There's a tier break for me after 4. I don't know if it's the same for you, but
I have a tier break after 3.
Okay. Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay. So, positives with Judkins. Some of these will sound familiar from the summer if you listen to us break them down from Ole Miss. Just such a sound runner. He is just so clean, like getting to his spots, being patient, seeing the field, understanding how the play is going to develop, getting to where he needs to be. He is just a very technically sound running back. And that has shown up every year that I've watched him. Different systems, different scheme, like all of it. He always looks so clean. He's an explosive player, but I think the message coming into this year was like, his explosiveness is elite.
Yeah.
And when I watched him this year, I came away thinking his explosiveness is very good.
Right.
But it's not what it was, or it's not what I remember seeing. Can cut laterally quickly, can accelerate upfield quickly. He can make big plays happen with his burst and his speed. But he's not the game changing, field altering cut master, and that I remember him being. He lowered the shoulder more often this year.
Yeah.
I can tell you that. Way more often. And this kind of in the same fashion of Devin Neal. It's like they lost a little bit from the explosiveness and they turned it into a little bit more power. And the numbers for Quinshon don't look great. Like, yards after contact per attempt was actually down, and it's just over 3, which just isn't good in general. But this is where I'm just going to listen to the tape, because what I watched was a better player after contact this year. Like, he was consistently picking up, maybe it wasn't 4 yards, but he was picking up 1 or 2 extra yards this year through contact more than he was previously. And he was lowering the shoulder and putting guys on the ground a lot more often than he did previously as well. Yep. So that was an evolution of his game. And then the last thing on the pros side, very natural receiver. He is a player that is so comfortable in the passing game, and it's another guy that like didn't get a ton of work in any of his seasons really, but you can tell that he just has that smoothness and that natural ability where being a pass catcher in the NFL is not going to be a difficult task for him if a team wants to develop him there.
My takeaway from watching Judkins tape, well, one of my takeaways is this offense is loaded. Like, we're going to look back and be like, oh, God, they had like 4 really good NFL players on that offense. And like Will Howard was really bad. I think that's going to be the takeaway from the future us. But Judkins, the power element that he added to this game, it's almost that Ohio State asked him, like, you're going to be the Thunder to TreVeyon's Lightning, and you're going to have to, like, make that your identity. And that's what happened. I mean, he was delivering punishment, and especially, like, I remember seeing it a lot in the Iowa tape where he is like, these guys, I felt a little bad. I was like, oh, man, this guy just got, like, stiff armed into the ground, like he dribbled his head off the turf like a basketball, and then he drops his shoulder and puts a corner into the dirt. It's really nice, and you saw some of that in the Ole Miss tape where you're like, man, this guy can dole it out every once in a while. But it seems like you said, he kind of made that more of the MO for Judkins, and I did see a little less of the like special reverse field, find the opening and make it happen. And that's something that we kind of wanted him to do less of, because it seemed like that got him in trouble a little bit, where he would, cut right, and then he'd be like, oh, I got to get back to the left side because this is closed off. I got to, get through the back door, and then maybe get tackled for a loss. It seems like he was very much more up and down, north and south, and decisive about where he wanted to go. And that's good and bad, because I think we said this in the preseason. It's a little bit of what made him like special, where he could reverse field and take it, 90 yards to the house, because he, changed direction. He could find like an extra 20 yards. But in this Ohio State offense, they're asking him like, hey, we need you to get 8 tough yards. We don't need you to get, a big play every single time. We need to keep the chains moving. And I think that's the kind of running back that he turned into. And I think that's more of an asset for an NFL team, where he's going to, get to the second level and make the linebackers feel him play in and play out, and, become the goal line guy, the short yardage guy, as well as the pass catching guy. So I think this turns into a conversation of like, how much volume does he get, and not like, is he going to be a good NFL player?
Yeah. And that's an interesting question that gets raised after a season like this, because I think coming into the year, it was like, well, yeah, he's a tier 1 running back in this class. And now, I mean, I have 2 tiers of running backs ahead of him right now. Like, I have one player, and then I have 2 players, and then I have Quinshon and TreVeyon, literally in the same tier. So, on the weaknesses side, like what is limiting Judkins that maybe we weren't thinking as much about coming into the season? He's just not a creative running back. Like he is not a player that is creative in open spaces. I don't see enough creativity out of him. He's not making guys miss enough. And I thought, like, even in the years at Ole Miss, when like he had the crazy missed tackles force numbers, 78 last year, even then it was like, I'm seeing it, but I'm not seeing enough of it for how athletic you are. And now this year it's way down. He's 35. Okay, of course, on less carries, but the percentages break out to where this was a decline. 19% missed tackle forced rate this year, as opposed to roughly 28 in both of his years at Ole Miss. So I think, to what you were saying, like, they're asking him to be more of the get the yards that we need, lower the shoulder if you have to. Like, them turning him into that sort of player, like, dialed back all of that, like,
yes,
see the bit of juice that he did show in open spaces. And now I'm talking about a running back here where, like, I know you can make guys miss. I've seen you make guys miss even on this year's film, and I've seen you take guys to the ground with lower the shoulder, but it's not at the same level of the players ahead of him anymore. And so that's something where it begs the question, what is his NFL ceiling? If he is a very technically sound runner, very good one cut zone scheme running back that has the requisite athleticism and a little bit of power and some pass catching upside, but he's not necessarily a mega yard creator. What is his NFL upside then? So that's not a question I was expecting to have to ask with Quinshon coming into his draft eligible year, but here we are.
Yeah, I think my closing thought about Judkins is, like, I trust that he can become a productive player in the league. I trust that he can, raise his ceiling and become a better player year in and year out as he goes into the league, because I've seen development over his college career to inform that. He hasn't been the same player the 3 years that we've kept an eye on him. I think that he's become a more, a smarter back. I think he's become a more decisive back. I think he's become a stronger back. And if he continues on that path, I think there's a way for him to become an elite running back. Now, I don't know if he's that player today, like we might have expected him to be. And I think that's why he ends up, at 4 and looking outside of those top tiers.
Well, let's get into those tiers then. Your number 3 running back.
My number 3 running back is Kaleb Johnson.
Same here.
Yep. I think that's where we were going to end up one way or the other. Kaleb Johnson is, you look up a pure runner in the dictionary and you find his picture alongside that description, because what he does well is he gets downhill and he makes decisions and he gets yards. And it's like, this is what coaches want out of their running back 10 times out of 10. And I think it's impressive the meteoric rise that he had this season, because he wasn't necessarily, on our radar even before this season. It was like, oh man, couple weeks, couple shout outs, and it's like, man, this Kaleb Johnson kid is really kind of popping off. Like, what's his deal? And then he just did it every single week. And it was like, all right, I guess we gotta, push him up the ranks. We'll see what the tape looks like. And then the tape just matches exactly what you saw throughout the year. And, ended with 1,535 yards, 21 touchdowns, 0 fumbles. And then he also had 22 receptions, 190 yards. It's like I said before, this guy is the gold standard of what you want your running back to do. I think, if we talked about TreVeyon Henderson and Devin Neal being the RB1 last year, like, Kaleb Johnson's far and away that kind of guy. And I think in a different class, in a lot of different classes, he ends up being a number 1 kind of guy. So I was really impressed with what I saw, and he, does a lot of dirty work. He is a slasher. He's got speed. He's got some power. The elusiveness is, I think, a little hit and miss, but I think when he shows it off, it's there. And I think that's pretty impressive too. And the pass catching, he seems like he has pretty good hands. They don't ask him to do it a ton at Iowa, and that's not very surprising. I do think he misses on pass protection every once in a while. I think that can be cleaned up. But again, he's It's like when they're passing, which is not very often, he's running a lot of routes. And when he's in the block, like most of the time, he's making the right choices. But every once in a while, you'll see him like working inside out, and he'll just completely miss like a free DB on the edge. So other than that, like I really liked what I saw out of Kaleb Johnson.
Yeah, you pretty much hit everything. I mean, I loved watching Kaleb Johnson. Like I have, in terms of grade and like how good of a player is this? Like I have him graded in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
Like he will probably be a second round pick. I have the same grade on him that I had on like Zach Charbonnet.
Right.
And I would expect them to go in probably similar ranges in the NFL draft, but pure runner. You said it, man. Like literally, this is the definition of pure runner. He is so fluid. He's so smooth. He's so smart. Like there's a lot of guys, we've talked about a lot of guys where it's like, yeah, they know where to be. They know where the hole's going to open up. They're kind of seeing the play before it happens. Kaleb Johnson does all of that while also being, 6 foot, 225 pounds. Like he's just a beast.
Yeah.
And he is seeing the field so well. He's getting to his spots so quickly. He great understanding for the pace and the dynamics of a play. He is patient. He's waiting. He's seeing it materialize, and he's getting into tight spaces. 225 pounds. He is squeezing into the slimmest of holes and keeping his balance and picking up speed. Yeah.
Jesus.
Dude, writing notes when you're watching running backs, it gets a little weird.
It gets a little weird. You kind of, get a little flushed a little bit. You're like,
yeah. Whoops.
This guy finds holes, I tell you what.
And part of that too is his feet. I mean, it's all about feet with running backs, especially behind the line of scrimmage. He's got great feet at this size. They don't look heavy. They don't look slow. He's navigating messy spaces with his feet in precise manners. He's not losing his balance. He's not tripping. Just so clean. And he's a strong runner, can run through contact. That was the first thing I saw when I watched Kaleb Johnson way back when we gave him his first badge. It's like, damn, this guy's strong. He has got some leg drive. He's getting through contact easily. So we know he has that. And then there's that little bit of elusiveness. And you mentioned it. It's not necessarily a hallmark quality of his. Like I wouldn't necessarily say this is a super elusive runner, but it is a power runner that has an elusive skill set. And that's something similar to what I thought about a player like Zach Charbonnet. Like different build, a little bit of a different style of a runner, but the point kind of remains the same. It's a player that's going to win with power, but he is no slouch when you're talking about getting laterally, making tacklers miss in tight areas. And then smooth hands. Like this is what I'm saying when like guys aren't super involved as pass catchers, but when you watch the reps where they're getting targeted, it's like, yeah, piece of cake. Like I'm not worried about Kaleb Johnson as a pass catcher at all. Very fluid, very natural. The hands are soft, transitions to a runner very well. Everything about it, I think, is a big check mark for him. Totally agree about pass pro. It's inconsistent. He's got really good reps. Like there are really good reps of him picking up guys, blocking guys for an eternity. And then there's the ones where he just completely misses it, like misses the assignment or whips the block. So there's a foundation to build on. You're not starting from scratch, but there is work to do in pass pro. And then in terms of other, weaknesses, potential areas for improvement for him, he's not an exceptional athlete.
Mm-hmm.
Like at his size, he can break angles and he can get outside. He can finish runs. Like it's impressive. I'm not like he is a very good athlete, but when you're splitting hairs at the top of a class, like, yeah, he's not matching the guys in front of him, unfortunately. And then There's a few plays that I saw where the feet do get a little cluttered behind the line of scrimmage. I don't know if it's just, indecisiveness. He's waiting for something that's not happening, in the way that he thinks it's going to happen, but a little bit of, pitter patter of the feet back there. Wasn't something that I saw enough for it to be a super, red flag or anything.
I agree.
And then 4 fumbles coming into this year, but 0 this year on about the same amount of carries from the 2 years combined. So with a few of these guys, you can say the same thing where there's ball security issues that have existed. Most of these guys cleaned it up this year, but it is something that exists in the players past. But other than that, like really those are minor weaknesses compared to the strengths that you're getting with a player like this.
Yep, I would agree. I was, this is a complete player that really impressed me beyond like what I expected, I think.
So I have Omarion Hampton in the same tier as Kaleb Johnson.
I also do.
And I honestly, at this point in time, I have the same number grade on them.
It was splitting hairs for me.
Yeah. So Hampton, freak.
Go, please go. This is your guy, I'd say.
Yeah. Okay. So still is my number 1 running back coming into the season, and this year did not disappoint. I mean, there was a bit of projection with that ranking coming into the year. I thought Quinshon's 2023 film was maybe a hair better, but I liked the total package of Hampton enough to say I think this year could be huge for him. And it was. I mean, he took a big step forward. The offense took a big step back, and he didn't. And they relied on him a lot more, and it didn't phase him. I mean, he was getting 30 carries at points this year, didn't matter. Still putting up big numbers. How is he doing it? So we talk about players needing a quote unquote superpower. Some people call it a trump card, some people, whatever. Well, pick your phrase. I'm calling it a superpower. Omarion Hampton's superpower is contact balance. The guy just cannot be tackled. Like, guys are diving at his feet, diving at his legs. Doesn't matter. He's just whatever. I'm just going to keep on moving. And for a player like of this size, coming in at 6'1", 220, we've talked about some guys that are a little top heavy.
Mm-hmm.
This is not one of those guys. Like, he's got the extra height, but it's not showing up in any sort of balance. No, he's getting hit anywhere on the body. It doesn't matter. He's able to keep the feet moving to stay balanced. In a lot of cases, he's not even really losing much. He doesn't even have to rebalance. He's just continuing through contact. So that is something that is, the number 1 trait on the scouting report. He cannot be tackled in the fashion that a lot of these guys can. And then you throw on top of that the frame, like I said, which is kind of ideal, maybe a little tall, but he doesn't run that way really. And he's got crazy athleticism. I mean, the burst, the speed, the lateral ability, everything. It's all there. He's got the full package in this body type to have the athleticism, to have the strength, the power, the balance, to have all of that. I mean, this is that dude. And if it was, and we'll talk about number 1, of course, but you said it with Johnson, and the same would apply here with Hampton. This is a number 1 caliber running back in many classes. I mean, just an exceptional talent at this position.
The Hampton, I'm gonna go with our second comp of the episode, which I've already released for Omarion Hampton, but I feel it every time I watch it. It's Jonathan Taylor. And I know that's lofty given the player that JT is, but I mean, the way that Hampton plays, and I'll try not to just repeat what you already said, but he is such a strong runner. Like he seems impossible to tackle. Like these guys, I understand it's like, competition, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But the way that he powers through contact and the way that like it takes the whole team rallying to bring Hampton down, I mean, it's really, really impressive. And I mean, if I've said this a lot, if the other guy wasn't in this class, like he'd easily be, I think, the RB1. Like I love Kaleb Johnson, but Hampton, I feel like, is the more polished player. He's the more complete player. He's, he's got pretty much everything you could ask for in a guy. He loses his feet every once in a while because he's trying to, get to that second, third gear. But outside of that, like I just don't see a ton of flaw in Hampton's game. So I mean, there's a lot that we've said. There's a lot that you've said throughout the year. But I am just like, every time I watch Hampton, I'm like, man, this guy is going to be breaking away. Like you're going to be seeing clips of him on Twitter in 3 years from the NFL, like Omarion Hampton with his third touchdown of the game. He goes 146. And it's like, this is the type of guy that you invest in those, rebuilding teams or, and invest those high dynasty picks because it's going to pay off.
Yeah. Before we get into the, areas of weakness, if you want to call it that, receiving, I mean, it's no surprise because we talked about it all year, but for anybody that wasn't there for all that, he's a great receiver. I mean, another one of these guys that's just very natural in the passing game. And in this case, it's a player that got the work to back that up. 43 targets, 38 receptions, 373 yards. And I don't have it in front of me, but I know he had multiple touchdowns as a pass catcher this year. So this is the definition of a complete runner. All phases, running back, receiver, pass pro. Thought he's got a good foundation in pass pro. And especially, with his frame and his size, you need to see that. And I think you do. I think there's, of course, area for improvement, as there normally is with these guys. But I liked what I saw from him in that area. In terms
two receiving touchdowns.
Two receiving touchdowns. So yeah, the pass catching boxes are checked. What are the areas with Hampton? I think number one, like another one of these guys that's not necessarily a phone booth player. And you made the comment, he loses his feet sometimes. I think it's when he's trying to do stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I think he's not the sort of player that's going to move in tight spaces. He's one of these lateral, explosive, bursty runners, but he's not quick feet in the phone booth. And then vision is something we've talked about a little bit. It's something that coming into the year, I kind of the question mark over the box for him on, how well does he see the field? I thought it was improved this year. There weren't many times when I was seeing, oh, he should have done that, or what's he looking at there? But it did show up. There are certainly those plays, and maybe even more frequently are the plays where it feels like he kind of sets a target before he receives the handoff and just torpedoes it. Mm-hmm. Like he's like, this is the spot and I'm going to hit it as fast and as hard as I possibly can. And a lot of times he's running into traffic and he's running into linemen in that case. So I'm not sure if that's a coaching thing or how that pops up, because you see him, making good reads and making guys miss and running through guys like 90% of the time. So it's not one of these things that's concerning necessarily. It's just there. It's part of his game right now. And then another guy with fumbles, 6 fumbles in his college career, though this year he only had 1 on 281 carries. So that was an improvement for him. But other than that, that's it, man.
I don't have a ton to add for weaknesses. I mean, I feel like you hit the nail on the head pretty well. I feel like you said, the vision can be spotty where he's like, he makes a decision pre-snap. And if the defense, changes the look, it can end up being a little weird. But I mean, most of the time he is reading things correctly. So like, I'm not going to put a big knock on him. And I guess that's how you end up as RB2 in this class. It's like, he's making right decisions. He's a strong runner. He's got speed. And I like this player a lot, man. I wish he could end up on my teams.
Maybe he will.
No, unlikely. I wish.
And that leaves one, huh?
Yeah. Is this what the people came for?
If you stayed for an hour and where are we? Hour 20 or whatever.
Yep.
You've been like, where's the guy from Boise State? Where's my guy? Where's the hashtag my Heisman?
Yeah.
He's here. It's Ashton Jeanty. And what a ride. What a ride to get here, man. Because coming into the year, this wasn't the case. He wasn't in our top 5s. Coming into the year, we said this is not the kind of class where there's a no doubt 101. Like there's going to be intrigue at the top of the draft board. Ashton Jeanty pretty quickly changed that notion. And I think, I don't even remember when it was. It might have been the mock draft. I'm pretty sure I said, I don't think it's like, it's pretty locked in, but I don't think it's like as sharpied as the last 2 years. Like there's a chance that like Travis Hunter with some weird eligibility thing could, throw it in the garbage can. Throw that take in the garbage can.
I don't know.
I watched Ashton Jeanty with the perception that this was going to be an incredible player. And he easily the number 1 running back and all that. And I still came away just shocked. Just shocked at how good this player is. So would you like to start?
I mean, what is there left to say about Ashton Jeanty is, I think, the big question. But it was truly like a religious experience watching Ashton Jeanty, because you go in expecting something with him. And we've been watching him all year. We've been, tuning into his games all year because he's must-watch television. But actually watching him is like watching a painter, paint a masterpiece. You're watching a guy, that just has a full and complete understanding of how to play the running back position, just putting it all together against, every single opponent. Like you can say what you want about strength of schedule, whatever, but like everybody got it this year. It didn't matter who, like you can point to the Oregon game if you want to, the number 1 seed in college football. He did it to them too. The way that he like understands how his team is going to, like, it's almost like he can see the future a little bit. Like he knows exactly how the blocking is going to play out, and his pace, his eyes, his setup, it's all like perfect. And then then there's the tackle breaking, like that happens after he figures out the play. And that's why, the yards, why he had 800 yards before contact and then like 1,600 yards after contact. Because it's like, yeah, he can pick you apart before contact, but also like the first guy's not taking him down. I'm sorry. Like the stiff arm is unbelievable. The contact balance is some of the best I've ever seen. Like, this guy is there's a reason that he was the best running back in the nation, why he was so close to breaking the record, why it's like, what Boise State's game plan is, and it doesn't matter, why people see him as like a entity rather than like a player. Like, this is the guy. This is exactly who he is. This is the as advertised player. That's it.
Everything about him feels supernatural.
Yeah.
Like, it really does. It feels like he's seeing things before they happen, like he's seeing into the future, and then it's like guys try to tackle him, it's like he's got a force field around him. Like, it's nothing about it feels natural at all, but it is very natural. And let me ask you this before I get it. I got a long, I know, we talked about him all year. I got a long list, but where is he in relation to Bijan Robinson for you?
It's weird because he's such a different player. Like, it feels like I have Bijan like maybe that much higher than him. Like, I think Bijan is the like single most like special player I've scouted. And like, I didn't scout like Saquon and all that. I started this when we started Camp Dynasty. So Bijan, like, the way he moved just felt like different than anybody else on the football field. Jeanty, it feels like it's a lot of it is mental. And I think that he's such an intentional player. It feels like Bijan can be like a little bit reactionary and like he can make things happen. It feels like Jeanty has a almost like innate sense of like how football works and how the running back position works and how the offensive line works, that it ends up like adding something else to him. Because you watch him and it doesn't feel like when you watch Bijan, when you watch Saquon, it feels more like when you watch like Christian McCaffrey, where he's like going to pick you apart and you don't necessarily realize he has 220 yards and 2 touchdowns, but like the end stat line shows it and the team is dominating you because of it.
And that's a great way to say it, because I think he's not Bijan or Saquon in the sense that he is not the same level, different level of an athlete. Yeah. Like he is not the level of an athlete where you watch him and you're like, oh damn, this isn't going to happen every few years. Like, this is going to be a once in a while type of thing. But that being said, I think you could make the argument maybe pretty easily that this is just a better player. Right. Like this is a better running back than Bijan was coming out. Like, you give Bijan the bump because he's doing things athletically that you're not seeing from, 99.9% of college running backs. But I think Jeanty is doing a lot of the things that we liked about Bijan, because first and foremost, like, Bijan was not just he's a great athlete. Like, Bijan was very, very good in all of these phases that we're talking about. Jeanty, the vision, the short area, the contact balance, reading the play, finding the hole. Like, Bijan was doing all that too. But Jeanty is doing it at such a ridiculously high level that it kind of feels like something I've never seen before.
Yeah.
And so, to answer my own question, I have the same number grade on both of them right now.
I think that's appropriate.
And that's not at all where we expected to be. Like, if you would have told, if I'd before the year, it's like, hey, you're going to have a running back that you have graded the same as Bijan this year. Like, who's that?
Like Omarion Hampton? That's what he's going to end up being.
Right. So what are the nuances of the game? You outlined them. It's a lot ahead. It's a lot ahead. Just this is the officially licensed Camp Dynasty After Dark episode.
Yeah.
99.
I mean, It's kind of what it's like watching Ashton Jeanty.
It really is. Very heady player is what I'm saying.
Right. Smart, I would say.
Very smart player. Yeah, I've talked a lot about guys that see things in a very quick way. They're understanding how the play is developing. They're understanding when they need to be there and how to hit that spot. Jeanty is doing that at like 1.5 speed. And I'm talking about super talented runners like Kaleb Johnson.
Yep.
Jeanty is still doing that at 1.5 speed above Kaleb Johnson. Like the way that he finds the creases and it's like he knows they're going to be there. It's not even like a thought. It's like he knows when to cut, and every time he does it, the hole's there. It's all happening at like super speed. And if you're just watching it, like if you're just kind of kick back, put the feet up on the table and watch the game, you're like, oh wow, it was impressive. But when you like really dial in on it, it's like, how the fuck did he do that? Like, like how did he know to cut right at that moment to when that hole was going to open and then hit the hole with speed and power and all of the things that make him special after the line of scrimmage. But so before the line of scrimmage, he's doing all of these amazing things. The feet are so fast. Like that was something that when we talked about him in the middle of the year, it was like, man, like, what is this guy? Like, he's not a Bijan level athlete. And then I watched a little bit of it and I was like, man, it's the feet. It's the feet. And that is something that shows up every game, how just lightning quick he is with his feet, how intentional he is with his feet. There's no wasted motion at all with Ashton Jeanty.
Mm-hmm.
The lateral quickness, incredible. Like his ability to bounce runs, and all of this is interconnected. He's understanding where he needs to be to hit the spot and where the spot is going to be. And then he has the lateral quickness to get to that spot before anybody can even react. Like linebackers don't have a chance. They're trying to fill gaps. He is eliminating the possibility of them doing that by how quickly he's able to get outside.
Linebackers are playing by the rules while Jeanty's like making the rules.
Right.
They're like, yeah, I got to fill front side while he's scraping backside. And Jeanty's like, yeah, I'm on the second level. Everybody. Like, sorry.
So there is a bit of special athleticism. Like he is not just he's a really smart runner. He knows where to be and the feet are good. And no, there is a level of athleticism here that is very, very, very good. Then we get to the second level, or not even. We're in the hole. We're in the hole at this point. The contact balance. just let
Keep
it
going.
happen.
Just power through it. Just power through.
We're in the hole.
Yep.
The contact balance is second to none. I mean, you said it. Like, I don't think I've ever seen this happen. And it's so good that it actually led both of us to believe before the year that it was fake.
Yeah.
Like there's no way a player can be this good. This is just San Jose State being terrible. That's not true because he's doing it against everybody on the schedule, including Oregon this year. And he was doing it at an even higher clip against the bad teams this year. So his ability to bounce off guys, and you said it with the stiff arm, the way that he uses his arm, period, in traffic to get space off defenders, to give him the time to keep the feet moving while he's still getting off of contact. Incredible stuff. So we're through the hole. We've already broken a tackle. We've picked up yards after contact. Now we're at the second level. And now he is just going nuclear. because he's in space and good luck getting him down at this point. Like, you have failed by letting him get to the second level, and now have fun trying to bring him down, because all that contact balance and all that vision and all that elusiveness that's happening before the line of scrimmage and at the point of contact is dialed up by 4 when he's in the open space. So all of this comes together to form just a truly special player. All levels of this position, I was blown away watching him at every single level. It's the hyper nuance of the feet behind the line of scrimmage, all the way up to the macro, the big fun plays that he's making in the open space, stiff arming guys, spinning away from guys, juking guys, running guys over. It's all there. So pure runner, he's untouchable. I mean, it's one of the best I've ever seen, if not the best I've ever seen. And then throw in a dose of being a great receiver. Like, he didn't have the numbers this year, but he still had the moments on film. I mean, the numbers last year, like, we know that they exist. And if you don't know, he had 44 catches for 578 yards last year, which led all running backs. This year, he only had 20 catches for 116 yards. But in those limited opportunities, he's making ridiculous plays. He was making ridiculous plays on a very limited amount of receiving touches. And even the ones that he didn't convert, like when he's lined up one-on-one against man coverage on the outside as a wide receiver, and he wins the route and the quarterback misses him. That's a running back, a 5'9" running back winning one-on-one against man coverage on the outside.
Yep.
I am running out of, I've said a lot of words, and now I'm finally running out of words to describe how special this player is.
Yeah, I don't know if I have much else to say about Jeanty, after a full season of, watching him, scouting him, and then diving into the tape and having every feeling that I've had all season vindicated by the tape. I am wholeheartedly impressed by the player, and I can't wait to see him in the NFL. That's about all I got. This is a guy that's not only special, but also seems like he's a football genius. It's all coming together for Jeanty.
Can we make a Christian McCaffrey comp?
I kind of did. And I don't know.
I think you gave permission to do it. So now I'm like, let's do it.
I kind of want to. I don't know if he's as good of a pass catcher, but he could be.
Yeah. Let's
just do it.
Let's do it.
Who's going to stop us?
Nobody.
Yeah. Hey, eat shit, guys. This is Christian McCaffrey 2.0.
Because that's what it feels like to me.
But better.
Yeah. The best player you've ever seen in the NFL. Fantasy nuclear bomb.
Yeah.
And that's not even selling it, overselling.
And that's not even my RB1. All right. So next up, I got Bashal Toon. Let me tell you about a guy that can put it.
Oh man. Well, that was fun.
Yeah.
Been waiting all year. I mean, we obviously gave him 11 badges. It's not a new name here by any stretch, but getting to dive into his film and to understand what makes him him and what makes him special was incredible, because it's all very real. Nothing about this is fabricated. Nothing about this is Boise State versus San Diego State. This is all very real stuff from this player.
I'm jealous. I'm gonna make some irresponsible offers for 101.
If you are a lucky fantasy manager sitting there with 101, feel very, very lucky for the opportunity that you have been given.
For the YouTube people.
Yeah, for the YouTube people, I just got flipped off for I am one of those 101 holders right now on a playoff team of all things, but I digress. So that is 8 running backs and a few more actually as we split the lists. So, and it's also an hour and 40 minutes of running back content, which is very required in a class like this. We could go another hour, just throw names out there, dudes saying names, but we won't do that. But is there anybody else that didn't make your list that you feel inclined to shout out?
Yeah, I think the big name that people are probably like, how did he not even, is Cam Skattebo. I think he's the one where it's like he had incredible production. It's just like the tape is hard to find, man. Like I couldn't make an accurate analysis on the player, so I didn't feel comfortable like putting my stamp of approval on him. I think actually Bashal Tutin is a good, like a decent player that keep an eye on. And then Taj Brooks was the other one out of Texas Tech, where it's like, this guy's got some tools, and I don't know exactly who he's going to be, but there's some names to keep your eyes on.
Yeah. Dylan Sampson and Nick Singleton were the 2 names I was going to shout out. We covered them on your top 8. Skattebo is definitely a name where if you are sitting there, like you said, like just there's nothing out there right now. Like there's no all 22, and I didn't feel comfortable just pulling random YouTube clips to form an opinion about the player, because really there's not even those. Like you'd have to like really dig deep and try to find some weird shit to watch Skattebo right now. So that is very much a TBD player for us right now. And then the other name I will just throw out there too is Jonah Coleman, who I think is a fun player, it very much in the mold of this day 3 sort of like limited upside player. But like we've seen like Amari DeMarcados have roles for like multiple years at this point in the NFL. Coleman is one of those guys. So I don't know if that turns into fantasy relevance, but like he's been a fun player at Arizona and Washington, and I think he's very much in that mold of like pass catcher with some upside potentially on first and second down.
And there you have it.
Wow. All right. So that's we took a week off, and then we pumped out a bunch of content about running backs. So that feels good.
It's basically a double episode. So it
really is. So if this wasn't any indication already, incredible running back class.
Yeah.
Highlighted by maybe the best running back of the Camp Dynasty era, at least tied. At the very least tied.
Do I got to reformat the thumbnail?
You might.
Best running back in Camp Dynasty history, question mark?
Better than Bijan? Exclamation point, question mark? But it's not even all that much just clickbait. It's kind of real. So, and then a lot more after that too. So get excited. Dynasty rookie drafts are quite a ways away, but the picks are locking in. Leagues are ending. Championships are being decided as we speak.
Yeah.
So it's all happening.
Those if you're in them.
Yes. Good luck. I hope you won. And if you didn't, I hope you got a high draft pick, because it's a good year to have one of those. So, and on that subject, next week, back to regularly scheduled programming here. Next Tuesday, we will drop wide receivers. And I'm excited about that one too, because maybe it's not the star power that we know this running back group has, but I think there's going to be some fun surprises in that running back group outside of
the wide receiver group.
Yes, the wide receiver group. Thank you. Outside of course, the top few names that we know very well at this point.
Yeah, I'm excited to dig into the receiver class and see, maybe there's some diamonds in the rough. Maybe there's just some straight up diamonds in this class that, people may not have heard about outside of the guys that have been circulating.
So if you enjoyed our conversation about 2025 Dynasty rookie running backs, be sure to find us on Twitter at camp_dynasty and TikTok while it still exists. If you want to do that, I don't know. January 19th is the date, by the way. I finally figured that out.
Oh.
But that is at camp.dynasty. Otherwise, if you are listening on the pod feed, head over to YouTube, hit subscribe on the channel. We very much appreciate that. And if you are watching on YouTube, why not just head over to the pod feed, Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen, and like, rate, review, subscribe, share.
5 stars?
5 stars, whatever you got to do.
You might as well. I mean, if you like it enough to watch it on YouTube, throw 5 stars on Spotify. You got to listen to it.
If you think Ashton Jeanty is a good player, give us 5 stars. But all right, this was fun. I'm glad we finally got to do it. I'm excited about wide receivers next week, and I hope you are too. But thanks for stopping by Camp Dynasty this week, and we'll see you next week.